So hello, my name is Suzanne Sebring, and I'm your Zoom host for today to assist our presenter, Uta Maschke. Welcome to the breakout titled To Be Seen and Heard, Why Choosing Adult Ed Non-Credit is a Good Choice. I'm now going to make a few housekeeping announcements before we get started. Please keep yourself muted unless you have a question you want to ask. It's a smaller group today, so if you do have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask. Or you can also enter your questions in the Q&A or the chat. I will be monitoring those, and then I will share that information with Uta. We'll be uploading the breakout presentation materials and recording this breakout, which will be available to all of the attendees after the conference is over. After the breakout, please remember to click on the button that says Rate Session to complete a brief survey. And now we have 13 here in the room. I would like to introduce Uta Maschke. Take it away.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you everyone for joining me this afternoon, or it's still morning, after a really great keynote this morning, which I did not know was exactly about the topic I also want to address with one more specific example to be seen and heard, how we can encourage our students to thrive and to pursue long-term, short-term career goals. So if you have questions at any point, feel free to unmute. This is a small group. We can turn this into a dialogue as soon as possible. So I want to talk a little bit about how we as a consortium in the East region of San Diego work with our students and work really hard to acknowledge our students, to work with them, to support them, to make them feel heard and seen and create that sense of belonging. You may know already that East Region Adult Education is one of 71 California Adult Education Program consortia. In our region here in San Diego, we have 6. We somewhat not modestly call ourselves the super region because we're bringing together quite a large geographic area with a lot of students who join our adult education consortia. On the bottom of the screen, you see the consortia which make our super region. So we have in the South Bay and Sweetwater, in the North, Education Career Network, that's Palomar College, Vista, Escondido, Poway. Then we have the Central one, San Diego Continuing Education, which is now the College of Continuing Education. There's Mira Costa, and then there's also the Imperial County. So some of the things I want to share with you apply to all of us in the region. Some of them are more specific to our consortium to the east. What I would like to talk about is a little bit who are our learners and how that is, how that might be interesting and relevant to the high school counselors and non-credit and credit staff at the colleges. And then go a little bit in our programs and how we facilitate transitions by way of talking about our career pathway system. And then focus a little bit on SB 554, but only a little bit because there's another session at 12 where we dive more into detail about what SB 554 stands for. So with that, let me narrow into and share a little bit about our consortium. We have 3 members in our consortium: Clear Market College, Grossman College, Mountain Empires Adult Division, and Grossman Adult Education, which is under the Grossman Union High School District. In our consortium, we bring together about, right now, 8,000 students, most of them older than 24. We work with 4 transition specialists. You might consider them generalists who support our students with transitions into adult education, throughout adult education, and then into colleges and careers. We have a dedicated coordinator for our accelerated entry into career program. We have a business engagement coordinator who works with students for resume interview, job search competencies. We host career fairs We bring counselors into our sites at the K-12 adult schools from the colleges to work with our students. And as many of you may also do, have college tours where we introduce our adult school students to college environments. So this is like the overarching sort of 30,000-mile high view of who we are. Before I explain a little bit more how we work with our students, I thought it might be helpful to contextualize a little bit what we do. Some of you may know this, then please bear with me, and thank you for your patience in advance. Most adult school, K-12 adult school programs that are offered across the region fall into these four categories: English as a second language, adult basic education, adult secondary education, and career training, technical education. In our consortium, we, as I've said, have right now about 8,000 students. We see the fluctuation over the years here a little bit. The distribution between programs is somewhat typical for all of our adult ed consortia. The South has more ESL students. But as you can see, most of our students enroll into career training programs. And that is really not that surprising if you consider that adult students who join our adult ed consortia usually have a very strong sense of urgency. Something has happened in their lives that brings them back to adult education. Right? Unemployment, single household, risk of homelessness, need to change careers, formerly incarcerated. So these types of learners who usually have a very strong motivation that might not last quite as much if that sense of urgency isn't met right away. Of these students we are working with, we have about, as you can see, sort of 5% or so who transition to college from our ESL and ABE programs. This might seem like a small number, but I don't, there's more to that story to be told, and I come back to it in a moment. One major reason I would like to mention right away is that sense of urgency. Right? So our students' motivation is with this goal of, I need employment, I need to get a job. If there's a little less sense of urgency, college is already always on the radar. We, as I mentioned, offer transition services, and those make the difference more and more for our students. I think adult education is carving out a space where we support students in navigating that interesting gap between high schools, colleges, non-credit, credit units at the colleges and universities. And that gap is not on a linear trajectory, and it's not really time-bound. Right? That gap can be experienced at any point in a student's life. Someone might have dropped out of high school 30 years ago, but does not have had that experience and being supported in the transition to something new, to something else. With our transition services, we enroll students into special programs at the colleges. I'll come to that in a moment. We have been able to increase that number steadily, except for last year when things changed for all of us. These changes, these fluctuations in numbers, and the seemingly low number of students who transition into colleges made us reconsider our work with students. Right? What is it that we are missing? And what is it that we need to pay more attention to when we want to serve our students in a much better way? We needed, first of all, to get away from this linear perspective. Right? So that student starts here, say with English as a second language, then high school programs, then career or college, which, as we probably all instinctively already know, is hardly ever the case that it's that linear. But we wanted to make that explicit and and acknowledge explicitly that our students do not follow a linear trajectory. So we wanted to make it also explicit to our students that we hear them, right? That they are not interested in this or cannot afford or feel like they cannot afford this linear transition from A to B. Instead, we started to think about an ecosystem or a subway map, if you will, where we can be more open for students to enter, exit, be on different platforms, miss the train, come back, or get lost, but always have an opportunity to find their way forward or back, if you will. So our transition services then are focused on a very person-centered approach. I already talked about that sense of urgency with which our students come. We wanted to address that right away. So the piece that was mentioned this morning in the keynote, how can we convey to students that we hear them, led us to a refined intake protocol that I will share in a moment, which usually starts with an invitation, right? Welcome. This is your place, feel comfortable here. What brings you here? And this question, what brings you here, is usually an awesome conversation opener. Our students also, of course, like all of us as human beings, want to feel that sense of belonging. And adult schools have not always been a place where students really had that sense of belonging. So we wanted to create also physically an environment in which students feel at home. At colleges, we often have student centers or special clubs. We didn't really have that. So we created a student center quite physically, quite literally, where students can develop that sense of belonging. Connected to urgency and belonging is the student's impression that there are scarce resources. And sometimes that's just the fact, there are. But through our transition services and that ecosystem that we're now addressing, we are slowly being able to address that better. And then, of course, life happens. And for our student, it is more, I think, than more traditional, non-traditional students. Life happens and education has to align around this life. Right? Whereas for a more traditional trajectory, it's education happens and life is organized around that education. So it's really flipped for our students. Acknowledging that, and this is a lot of text on the slide, acknowledging all these facts, listening intently to our students, we develop these specialized support services from when the student enters our K-12 adult school personal adult education through their journey with us and when they exit. And as you can see here, there are many points of contact and stages to be addressed and acknowledged. Not every student follows that track, but this is sort of the overarching support that we want to provide for our students, and we do. So if you are at a high school, and you might have a student who is not certain or is certain that college is definitely not for them, there are other options that might support them in sort of delaying certain decisions for all the right reasons. Right? And when that is the case, I think they are at home with K-12 adult schools. They can find that sense of belonging and a moment to breathe or slowing down things through the support we provide and that other K-12 adult schools also provide. So I mentioned that we created a special intake form that we have in the background when we meet with the students for the very first time. So as an example of the questions we ask our students, and these questions are very different from any matriculation web advisor forms for at K-12 adult schools, the typical registration form. We go beyond demographics, right? To gain that holistic understanding that our keynote speaker was mentioning this morning. This intake form sort of initiates further conversations and work with our students throughout their journey with us. So if you think back to the subway map that I showed, wherever the student finds themselves, or where we find the student at a certain moment in time, we can go back to this intake form and consult and see what is it that the student already shared with us, so that we don't ask the same questions time and again. Based on all this information, we create what we call a transition map with our students. And it's really the student who creates that map with us, not we with the student. This is a student-owned document. It is intentionally very simple and maps out for the student milestones, responsibilities, and possible long-term goals. This is a living document that we keep using with our students to also help the student understand their own journey, help them understand, help them reflect on their own journey. Within this ecosystem, within our work with the students, we need, of course, support ourselves, right? So this ecosystem in which we operate fully acknowledges that there are many, many resources that are beyond the scope of any single adult school or beyond the scope of any single support services specialist. So we also created with our partners at the colleges, with our partners to the South, North, East, Central, a system where we can refer our students to other partners. Traditionally, adult schools lack support services, counseling services. Through our Adult Ed Consortium, we are able to tap into college support for our students, which has made a huge difference. As you may know, like once a student leaves the high school districts, there are scarce resources for initial counseling services, and that's student transitions. Mm-hmm.
Can I just ask you, I have a question in the Q&A asking if it's possible to share the map, like with a link. It's hard for them to read or see it on the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
So once the student exits, transitions to college, to a job, or into another training program at another adult school, we follow up with the student for up to 1 year. Not just for reporting purposes and requirements, also with the understanding that a student might come back to us a year later with new needs, with a new sense of urgency, where they either want to pick up where they left off, right? You step off the train, you get back on it, or they want to start something new, explore something new, or they found a new motivation for a training program or a transition to college. Our programs are focused in our career technical education on this bigger goal at the end, right? Attaining employment. So as you may know, we offer everything from workforce preparation to credential programs at the K-12 adult schools. The difference to the colleges might be that our adult school classes are shorter. They have a fee, a very low fee, and they often connect to a job right away. We are changing this in our Strong Workforce Consortium more and more. One of the advantages adult schools still have is that we can integrate new programs at a faster pace than most colleges can. So if you're working at a high school as a counselor, for example, there might be opportunities for high schoolers to join an adult ed program at an adult school to attain a credential or a certificate within 8 weeks that might serve as an interim step, either then going to college or joining the workforce. So for students who are not certain or who don't think college is for them. This is also an opportunity to gain skills, to gain critical skills and competencies for a well-paying job while not in college yet, or while not going to college. So the examples you see here are fairly typical, as you may know from the keynote speaker yesterday. Construction is in high demand. Most adult schools can pivot to these high in demand occupations fairly quickly. Yesterday, you may have joined a workshop that talked about a data repository that we are developing across the region for those career training programs. If you are at a high school as a counselor, this may become a go-to tool for you, because it gives you an overview of what kind of career training programs the student can join right away once they leave high school, or later when they come back for advice. Right? So it offers up-to-date information on the career training programs we offer across the whole region, which allows the students to be flexible and makes them more independent of locations at which we offer. I mentioned early on that our our processes to support students in transitioning to college had lower numbers or seemingly lower numbers. That is changing drastically, dramatically at this moment in time. Many colleges, together with their adult education consortia, are introducing SB 554, which is dual enrollment for K-12 adult schools. As I mentioned before, there's another session on that this afternoon. So I just want to give you a quick preview. This bill allows adult school students who participate in a high school diploma or high school equivalency program at the adult schools to have special admittance status at the colleges. That is, the fees are waived for them and they can explore college at very low risk while at an adult school. It's a really exciting project. It's explicitly equity focused and provides, for example, also for non-residents, undocumented students and transferring into college, that has removed pretty much all barriers that we have struggled with before. SB 554 allows all the benefits you may be familiar with from dual enrollment for K-12 adult schools. One of the major differences is that our students enrolling through SB 554 attend courses on campus or remotely, and those are all credit-bearing courses that do count towards high school completion. If you want to know more about this piece, please join this afternoon for the session. We dive into detail then. I wanted to bring it up here because SB 554 for us became also a catalyst to review how we work with our adult ed students in high school diploma programs. We wanted to accelerate their diploma achievement, their experience in these high school diploma programs. We wanted to accelerate their experience, and also set high expectations. So we mapped out which college courses actually benefit and count towards high school diploma completion. And as you can see on the snapshot, the left side is sort of what you might be familiar with. Depending on where you're working, you already have this in place, or you have someone who knows all of this. Our challenge was that we had someone who knew all of this, but we didn't have a systematized way of working on this with our students. And we didn't have a transparent way to show our students how it really works, right? So the students were often left with this impression, So somebody knows, somebody decides on my behalf, somebody evaluates, but I'm not part of the decision-making process. With this mapping, with this map, we were able to become way more transparent with our students, show them how it works, right? So, and going back once again to the keynote this morning, that level of honesty changed our students' motivation, right? They knew how this worked. They knew what was in it for them and how they could accelerate their own experience in adult schools. The true epiphany is on the right side, where we finally realized that there are also other courses at the colleges that we can translate and make count toward a high school diploma completion. So it really opened up our own thinking about the adult learners experience in our adult ed consortia, and out of our adult ed consortia into colleges or a well-paying job. So it was SB 554 that made us aware of it. It's something though that also can exist and should exist without that special bill. Let's skip this. This afternoon, we will talk about how we work with our students in the special admittance program. It has shifted our whole view and our students' motivation for college. So in the beginning, I showed you the data, the graph for high school, for matriculation to college with the high school diploma program at the adult school. As you can see here, we are changing and our students are changing in their motivation to matriculate to college. We, as you can see, before we introduced SB 554, we had about 30 students co-enrolled per year. We still have those 30 students co-enrolled per year, but we also now have additional new students who matriculate under this special admittance status and complete their high school diploma program in accelerated manner. So the opportunity for adult students to explore another option, in this case college, change the dynamics, right? Change the paradigm for our adult learners, where a student who felt less motivated to ever complete the high school diploma is now highly motivated to do so because that other option is available and can be utilized without any additional barriers or challenges. So I think this is another nice illustration of what our keynote speaker mentioned this morning. Right? Yeah, there need to be, if we can provide honest options, our students will be motivated and energized to pursue their own education and career journey. So back to the pathway program that I mentioned before, along our students' journey, along the lines of us thinking through our students' journey, we wanted to take the next step and find a way to translate that rather complex map into something that our students could utilize. So we started a mapping project, and this is really always in draft form and just the start of it. We started a mapping project that we want to share with our students, right? Where a student with a sense of urgency joins us and then has various options to pursue their own goals. And to sort of have time to reflect on their own goals. So as you can see on this initial map, there are many options, and for our consortium, 6 paths our students can pursue that lead into different industry sectors and different opportunities for employment and or to college. For our consortium, this translates into a journey that from starting and onboarding leads to what we call career essentials, and then into industry-specific path. That, of course, doesn't need to be that way. The interesting thing for me here is that a student, depending on their prior life and work experience, might, of course, also skip what you see in the middle here and move right into a path or into Imperial. Right? So we now also have a better way of working, understanding where a student is at and visualizing with the students, what can I skip? What is my next step? We translated that there's one example, we break it down into different industry sectors, right? The example I'm showing here on the screen, sharing on the screen, is for welding. If the student is interested in that path, these are the courses, classes, certifications the student could attain. These are the additional certificates the student could complete. And then these are the different types of jobs she could pursue or apply for. Further to the right, these are our industry partners with whom she then could work. Right? So we wanted to map it out all the way to an actual job in our area, in our region, so that it's not just regionalized, but also localized. Because as we all know, something that might be true for the coast might not be true for inland. So we wanted to be able to show to the student, here's the employer with whom we work. Here's where you could get a job if you pursue this path. So we keep mapping that out for all our career paths. So for example, collision repair and construction, so that a student could have 6 maps. Think back to the subway map that I mentioned before. We would then have detailed plans, maps that would allow you as a student to navigate a complex ecosystem. And I'm almost at the end of what I can share with you. There are some more thoughts for that we are sort of chewing on and working with. We want to tailor our processes, of course, more for the adult learners we are working with, acknowledging that they are in this complex ecosystem, that we might want to think about a subway map instead of a linear pathway. And if we do so, how can we bring in the students as the one we want to support in navigating this complex system? Yeah, that's a snapshot about us and how we keep learning how to listen and hear our students. Let's talk.
All right. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute and ask, or you can pop it in either the Q&A or the chat box. I actually did have a question. Could you go back just like 2 slides, I believe, Uta? I think maybe one more. There was one more. Sorry, I don't know where this was. There was maybe one more ahead. I think you got that. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Let me go back to the beginning.
Okay. Yeah, it was past that.
Okay.
Yeah, past that visual. You had the pathways at the bottom of the slide. Depending on path. Right there.
Yep.
Yeah. So on the end, you have the path is available solution for non-residents. Could you kind of explain each of those lines in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, it relates to SB 554 though, right? So SB 554 is the Senate bill that grants special admittance status for adult K-12 adult school students who are enrolled in the high school program, high school equivalency at the adult school, and allows them to take up to 11 credits at the colleges. No restrictions other than some PE courses are not available. Under this program, which we for our consortium call CPAP, there are options to explore for non-residents, right? And for them to not have to pay non-resident tuition at the colleges. So if a student participates in SB 554 for 2 semesters at the colleges while completing their adult secondary education, for college purposes, for residency purposes, they are then considered a resident. Under SB 554, I do not ask for residency status. So the student, by way of participating in SB 554, gets time, accumulates the time that it needs to become resident, to move into residency status. Once they have residency status, they qualify for the promise and Pell Grants without any financial burdens. Yeah,
that's so great, and that has never been a possibility before.
And the same for someone who doesn't qualify as a dreamer, right? So for our undocumented students, this is truly an equitable opportunity for our undocumented students. At the K-12 adult school, we don't ask. The only condition is older than 18. So if they enroll with us for a high school diploma, high school equivalency program, and participate in SB 554, they can become AB 554 eligible, and then next step, qualify for California grants.
Nice.
So it has a huge potential to support our undocumented, not yet dreamers and dreamers fully. Yeah.
That was great. There is another question that came in from Mendy. How is the data repository shared with other adult schools?
So the data, I'm sorry, don't get busy. I'm going to get back to it.
Yeah.
As you can see on the snapshot of this gigantic spreadsheet, this is a shared effort, right? In our super region, we meet on a regular basis to update this sheet. On the bottom, you see the participants: Escondido, Coronado, Rosemont, Poway, Ramona, Southwestern, Sweetwater, Vista. We share this, we own this spreadsheet together. Each adult school has a designated person who takes the lead and responsibility for that sheet to be updated and current at any point in time. Our next goal is to either integrate this into the already existing program finder, or sort of make recommendations how we can make the program finder more accessible also for our type of thing. So if you, all schools, as long as the school has an adult school, you are also a member of an adult ed consortium. So whoever leads your adult ed consortium would be the person who has access to this repository. Longer term goal would of course be also to develop a tool that can be utilized by our adult learners themselves. But that's going to take us a little bit longer, I think. Any other thoughts, questions? Are there any
Yes,
council?
there's another question here. Let's see. How might a rising scholar utilize the acceleration program? So the Rising Scholars Network, I think you're familiar with, is the formerly incarcerated population. So how might they be able to utilize the acceleration program is the question from Tanet.
So it's an excellent question. At the current state of things, they would only be able to utilize it if they haven't completed their high school diploma or high school equivalency. So most of our adult schools are connected with programs in the jails where students can do complete high school diploma. But if they haven't, they could just step into any adult school. And as soon as they register for high school diploma there, they would become eligible for this accelerated program. In a future iteration of such a special admittance program, we definitely all together want to think about opening up this type of support for all our adults. But then I mean, Suzanne can talk about this better than I, but the Ryzen Scholars program at the colleges is pretty powerful in itself, right? So a student might skip that step and matriculate to college right away.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, in the formerly incarcerated, a lot of times, as Ute suggested, a lot of the students, they're required, actually, if they do not have their high school diploma, they're required to get it while they are incarcerated. So oftentimes, in fact, some like the Grossmont Adult School is who has provided in the past the high school equivalency within like the detention facility, which is where Palomar College offers programs. So they offer college programs and Grossmont Adult School offers that high school equivalency. In that kind of a scenario, they could work hand in hand in order to be able to offer those students who are currently taking their high school equivalency that opportunity. However, that has been, community college is open access. So we are able to serve students and through college courses that aren't currently, that don't currently have their high school equivalency. And then there are a lot of transition programs that provide those students on ramps to the colleges once they are released from incarceration. They go into potentially a transition program on the campus where they have additional wraparound supports. They have student clubs. They have allies, faculty allies and staff allies that are identified for them to work with and start to build that community. So there is a pretty robust system in place that's growing all the time within the community college system. Also works in collaboration with the juvenile court and community schools that are run out of the county offices of ed. So there are linkages, but having a justice impacted past does not preclude any student from becoming involved in these different options. So if someone had not gotten their high school equivalency, as Ute said, they could enroll in a adult school and start their high school equivalency or continue their high school equivalency and also be eligible to through SB 554 to attend college courses. So there's different on-ramps. And that's what that visual showed that she showed you. It's not linear. They kind of come and go from all different areas.
And through the JA programs, we also have really good articulation into colleges, right? So if an inmate takes a career training program, landscaping, culinary, for example, we already articulated that into our colleges, so the student could transition right away with college credits already earned into college. And these transition programs for justice impacted usually also have other support mechanisms to cover fees. SB for our accelerated program, we arranged with our colleges that our students don't have to pay for books, student fees, health fees, things like that, right? So I think that's tuition waiver is a start, but of course we know that there are other costs associated with college. So waiving these other costs because tuition has already waived is sort of the next step we took, which makes it really powerful for students and formerly incarcerated, if in those transition programs, have access to some of the same support.
Yes, the same benefits. Yeah. There's another question in the chat from Sophia. She said, you may have answered this already, but what percentage of your population consists of ESL students? She saw in one of the charts that many incoming students have the primary goal of learning English for work. So just kind of curious how that plays as far as percentages. It's about 50%. Up and down a little bit, which is we are right now in an interesting, I hope, transition phase, right? As so it is 50%. It is self-identified, as we know, right? The student comes in and says, "I need to learn English. I need to improve my English." I think if we strive for better seeing and hearing our students, we want to follow up with the question. What's the motivation? Right? Why? What will it help you? Where do you see yourself with improved English competency, language competencies? And this will not surprise any of us, but there's a larger goal behind it, right? And that maybe, well, I need a better job, or I want to go to college, or I need to perform better on the job. My supervisor told me I need to do something about it. So that motivation behind registering for ESL programs, that's really the important piece, I think, where we need to retool how we offer English language support. So on the map that I shared with you, where it says career essentials, that's our first step at addressing that, right? Instead of the traditional ESL programming, we want to encourage students to participate in career essentials, where it's a more content subject focused, for example, in career essentials for health occupations. And the language support is folded in. So I can improve my English language skills by learning more about health occupations and gaining, for example, basic medical terminology. If I'm an English language learner and my goal is to be in the applied technology manufacturing sector, we would recommend a different type of career essentials that introduces the learner to basic business competencies. Right? So we want to pivot to this approach to meet the students where they really need the support. Right? So it's not just English as a second language, but it's something English for a purpose. Contextualized, right? I mean, specific. Yeah. That's awesome. Sophia says, thank you. These are awesome questions. That's nice. Well, while we're waiting for some other questions to come in, I was wondering, first of all, just remind you when you do leave the session, if you could please go ahead and rate. And also, if you don't mind turning on your camera for a moment, I would like to just take a picture to kind of capture who's in the room for this session. Up to you, of course. You don't have to, but if you can, that would be great. Thanks, Christina. Thank you, Mindy. Sure. All right, thanks, Kimberly.
Yeah, and if you're interested in learning in diving a little bit deeper into SP Prep 54 and this accelerated program, please join us at 12. A colleague of mine from Sweetwater and I will do a little bit more of a granular presentation on SP Prep 54.
Thanks everybody so much for attending. I don't see any additional questions in the chat, but as a reminder, the next session will start at 12. So feel free to explore, grab some food, whatever you need to do. And we look forward to seeing you at the next session. And thank you so much to Uta. I really appreciate your presentation.
Thank you all. Thank you for joining and the good questions.